He dated Elizabeth Taylor, slept in the White House, and made millions. George Hamilton can barely pay his medical bills. At 85, the movie legend received tragic news. His disease has returned, his riches is gone, and he must sell his decades-old mansion, dating the president's daughter to barely surviving. Nobody predicted this awful end. George Hamilton was born in Memphis in 1939. His mother was an Arkansas belle, and his father a famous Northern band leader. The combination of huge city and Southern charm would shape George's image. He relocated often as a child due to his father's music career. He became versatile and glamorous from early travel. His family was difficult, and he was the middle child. In 1944, everything changed. When George's father strayed with a band vocalist, the marriage ended miserably. His mother raised the kids alone during wartime. 5-year-old George. The split went beyond emotions. It affected his entire life. After leaving the family, his father stopped music to sell perfume in New York. He died young in 1957. From luxurious hotels and music to survival, George's youth changed swiftly. After their divorce, George and his siblings moved in with their grandparents in Blytheville, Arkansas. Life was peaceful briefly. He finally had a safe home. He grew close to his grandparents and learned Southern politeness that would last a lifetime. In 1947, both grandparents died. Finally, stability departed. Without money or help, his mother had 3 boys to care for. Not having any options, she was desperate. She flicked a coin. The heads would relocate to NYC. Tails, they'd try Hollywood. It touched down in Hollywood. One coin flip altered everything. They packed for California. George was 8. Hollywood felt like a calling. Path was still rough. The East Coast was their next relocation by 1950. George switched schools before attending Gulf Coast Military Academy in Mississippi. That military academy influenced him. It taught him discipline, posture, charm, and everything else he'd become famous for. He stood out with his composure and manners. Despite his polished exterior, his private life was grim. He still struggled with his stepmother's twisted relationship, which began before his teens. He kept it secret for decades. Everything changed at 19 in 1958. George had an MGM screen test. A high school acting award and charisma were his only training. Despite being broke, he obtained an agent who liked his appearance. MGM tried him. His $500 in part in Crime and Punishment, USA were meager, and the filmmakers didn't want him. George astonished everyone, even if they favored Anthony Perkins. Critics were surprised by his intense performance. He played a law student who shoots a pawnbroker and feels guilty. George made the persona cold and fragile. That role earned him a Golden Globe for Most Promising Newcomer. He was nominated for BAFTA. Hollywood didn't believe him. He had to bribe someone with Jack Daniels to appear on TV. That's how uncertain business was. You'll become famous one day. You plead for work next. He made another risky move around this time. His tanning began. Permanent, rich, deep. It was branding, not vanity. George sought attention in a community full of gorgeous guys. Tan made him easily recognizable. It eventually became his trademark. He joked with John Derek about who could get darker. George identified with his skin tone. He joked about it, owned it, and used it to stay relevant once his acting roles ended. The 1960 film Where the Boys Are Followed. George portrayed a posh college student. The movie was popular. It was simple, romantic, and timely for a changing America. The movie omitted the book's political undertones. George considered it a ridiculous film, but moviegoers enjoyed it. He even improvised a famous moment by creating a question mark on the sand with his co-star. His heartthrob status was confirmed that moment. The picture subtly depicted larger societal shifts in American sex and romance. Academics still discuss George's influence in gender, courtship, and pop culture decades later. The Johnsons, America's most powerful family, noticed his Hank Williams performance in 1965. That led him to a White House dinner with Linda Bird Johnson, daughter of the president. She was quiet, bookish, and presidential royalty. His Hollywood roots made him confident and polished. Somehow, they connected. George later remarked he could see her wild side behind her calm exterior. Their romance made headlines nationwide. They attended red carpets, visited Acapulco, celebrated Easter at the LBJ Ranch, and grabbed the attention at the Academy Awards. She didn't need a watch because she had a Hamilton, Bob Hope joked. But not everyone was happy behind the scenes. Lyndon B. Johnson hated it. He distrusted George. He worried about more than a Hollywood actor dating his daughter. His suspicions went deeper. Thus, he did what no father should. An FBI probe was ordered. This went beyond background checks. This was personal. The president questioned FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover to investigate George's life. They wanted to know about his pals, credit cards, family, and sexuality rumors. George's brother's homosexuality alone made him fear the worst. In that age, a hint of homosexuality could ruin careers. FBI persistently dug. Nothing bad happened, but they continued. An unexpected hunting expedition at the president's ranch was the oddest moment. The White House called George. Texas awaited him. No queries. After landing, Johnson brought him into the woods, handed him a gun, and stared at him like this wasn't about deer. George had to think quick. He cooperated, shot the gun, and impressed the president. Johnson smiled and called him Daniel, comparing him to Daniel Boone. The situation was clear to George. This wasn't hunting, a test. Test of manhood, a loyalty test, test of control. Another storm was coming. His draft status. George claimed he supported his mother and brothers to avoid military duty, but reporters and officials sensed a falsehood. At least his mother lived like royalty in Beverly Hills. Already outraged over Vietnam, the president found this unacceptable. George couldn't avoid the draft and date his daughter. Though Johnson didn't say anything, the message was plain. Join the war or leave my family. Pressure became too much. The romance ended late 1966. The twist. No bridges burned for George. George smiled during Linda's 1967 wedding to Marine Captain Charles Robb, posing for photos like a Hollywood premiere. He maintained in touch with the couple afterward. Even when Robb became Virginia governor, George was welcomed. The Robbs saw George perform in Washington, D.C. in 2012, long after the headlines faded. He subsequently revealed in his memoir that he looked at the ceremony and thought, "It might have been me." They invited him to dinner. The relationship persisted after decades. George Hamilton was the closest Hollywood actor to becoming the president's son-in-law for a brief, strange time in the 1960s. In the late 1970s, George's Hollywood star waned. An odd yet great twist followed. He played Count Dracula in Love at First Bite, a 1979 comedy. No one expected much, but Hamilton acted and produced it. The picture was unexpectedly successful. He went outrageous instead of serious. His Dracula joked and danced to disco. The public adored it. Hollywood now regarded him differently. As a gorgeous actor with good comic timing and business savvy. The film profited and revived Hamilton. He was bold in his personal life, too. Hamilton married in 1972 in a movie-like manner. Alana Collins, his lover, came by to pick up her belongings when he was with Elvis Presley's manager, Colonel Tom Parker. She was returning to England by plane. Parker suggested they marry that day unexpectedly, and they did. Elvis's own plane? Elvis's suite? The maid of honor was a dog, and the judge was waiting. Even time to play roulette. Hamilton returned home with a wife after losing $15,000. They fell in love in Acapulco years earlier after being unable to stand each other. It became something more between a pinch, a slap, and a whirlwind romance. Their son Ashley arrived 2 years later. Hamilton was a playboy who became a grounded father. The Medusa filming in Greece became a family honeymoon. Ashley would later act in Beethoven's Second in Iron Man 3. George and Alana raised him together after divorcing. George was more than a good parent to his son. He also befriended Alana's children from her second marriage to Rod Stewart. Though unconventional, the family worked. Most Hollywood divorces are chilly or tumultuous. Theirs wasn't. After splitting in 1975, George and Alana never truly moved on, stayed best friends. They communicated daily. They ate dinner. Alana drove since George was always late. Nobody needed to remarry, but they joked about it. Their marriage was better than most. George said he'd miss something and realize it was her after the divorce. They went beyond being a relationship. Alana nailed it. I have his back, and he has mine. George Hamilton faced another storm. George Hamilton came to the Philippines in 1979 to promote Love at First Bite, a vampire comedy. At the time, it was his career highlight. He was surprised to be invited to dine at the presidential residence with Imelda Marcos, the First Lady. One lunch became a global friendship full of splendor, secrets, and scandal. Hamilton captivated Imelda, and their relationship evolved swiftly. They shopped and traveled together.